The first one is about Peter Strzok. And this is one of the stories that has kind of flown under the radar in the mainstream media because they don't really talk about anything. They have a total agenda, and if it's not anti-Trump or I hate Trump, I hate conservatives, or look at the 30 neo-Nazis in North Carolina or South Carolina, whatever. Not saying that's not important to address and get rid of, whatever. But I'm just saying they don't talk about anything outside of the realm of hating Trump. And that story is Peter Strzok. He's an FBI agent who was a lead role in the Hillary Clinton private server investigation. And one thing that he did before I get into what happened today in the IG report, I just want to remind you, this is the same guy. During Hillary's private email server investigation, he changed James Comey, who was the head of the FBI. He changed his wording from grossly negligent to extremely careless. And this might sound like a little change because it is just a little change of the words, but the law is supposed to enforce if it's grossly negligent. That means that you're held accountable to law, and if it's extremely careless, you get away from charges. So that change there, possibly kept her from charges. But I don't even like to talk about this stuff because I've been hearing about all of it for months. It's like, I'm not the attorney general. I don't work in the government, so me talking about it doesn't really do anything. I could report on this stuff every day, but it's like, let's see if somebody gets held accountable for something. I've never seen a politician or like a multimillionaire really actually get held accountable. It's very, very rare. So, I just want to remind you, though, that Peter Strzok is the agent who was kicked off the Mueller investigation. He was literally fired with his lover, Lisa Page, because they were super anti-Trump and doing a lot of really sketchy stuff. But the bombshell that came out today, so this guy has a troubled past. He got kicked out of the Mueller investigation. He changed Comey's wordings to protect Hillary Clinton in her private email server investigation, which a lot of people who, maybe are left-leaning, if they're progressive left-leaning, they already know and they don't like Hillary. But if they're liberal left-leaning, they think, oh, why is it a big deal, private email server? Well, I mean, if you work in a high-level position of the government and you're working with a bunch of classified emails and things that you don't want anyone to see, you don't want your enemies to see, you don't want other countries to see, you don't want normal citizens to see, and you're running a whole private server for that, that's pretty sketchy. I mean, why would you create a whole new server just to send a bunch of emails? It's a bigger deal than, oh, her emails. It's a huge deal. And Peter Strzok changed the wording on the investigation, got fired from the Mueller investigation with his lover, and this came out today in the IG report. So that's just a backstory about Peter Strzok and his, I guess, troubled past in the media, as one would say. Lisa Page texts him. This is an IG report. Trump, in parentheses, not ever going to be president, right? Right? And his answer is, it should be the #1 headline on almost every news station today. He said, no, he won't. We'll stop it. So when she said Trump's never going to be president, this is somebody that is a lead in the Hillary Clinton private server investigation. He's an FBI agent, and he's working as a Mueller operative, or he was for months before he got fired. This is a high-level person at the FBI saying, no, he won't be president. We'll stop it? I mean, even Ben Shapiro, who is doesn't even like President Trump. Yeah, he's conservative and a lawyer, but Ben Shapiro hates President Trump on the low. He's always, trying to attack him, and it doesn't really matter, but what I'm saying is even Ben Shapiro is like, holy effing S-H-I-T. I don't want to say the word he said, but he's freaking out because even him, he's like, oh my God, that's crazy. I mean, aren't we supposed to vote on the president? I mean, if you're a high-level position in the FBI, your job is not to stop an incoming president. I mean, you can't do that. That's illegal, possibly a charge. I don't know, and I don't care. I'm not a police officer. I don't work for the government. I'm not the attorney general. So these decisions aren't up to me, but as a citizen, here live streaming for you, when I see a high-level FBI agent say, no, he won't be president, we'll stop it, that's very, very alarming because for a long time, people have talked about the deep state. And the mainstream media says it's a conspiracy theory, and in some cases it is. I think people get a little carried away with certain things, but it's very true. And someone, this is a liberal that's saying this, his name is Glenn Greenwald, he's a left-leaning news analyst. He says they're permanent power factions, the FBI and the CIA, they're permanent power factions in Washington who exert power over the president. They're supposed to be subordinate to the president. They're supposed to be taking orders from the president of the United States, but they think they're above him. You've had literal like CIA, FBI agents go on CNN and say, Trump better stop now, like, or else like they're threatening him literally on CNN and like telling him, you better stop now, we're in charge. So when you see an FBI agent say, no, we're going to stop the president, if you really want to talk about democracy, if you really want to talk about foreign collusion or domestic collusion or, rigged elections, look no further than the IG report today and Peter Strzok saying, no, we're going to stop the president. And on that note, I do want to say the Pulse nightclub shooter, we heard about the Pulse nightclub shooter for years. That was the, guy who pledged allegiance to the Islamic State. He went and shot a bunch of gay people at a gay club. And we heard about that for years, and they used that as a big gun control narrative. And then we found out this year in court, because the widow of the shooter basically said his father was an FBI informant for, 9+ years, and you knew that. So I believe, I don't know for sure, you could check me on this, but I believe that she got off the charges herself, that she was found not guilty because, part of the court case said that the Pulse nightclub shooter's dad was an FBI informant. So why are we finding out 2 years later after the Pulse nightclub shooting, after all the anti-gun propaganda, after all the gun control, outrage, now we're finding out 2-3 years after one of the biggest shootings in United States history that the shooter's dad was an FBI informant for 9 years? Like, isn't that kind of a huge deal? I would think so. I also want to say that in the Parkland shooting, the FBI was notified multiple times. And I'm not saying that they could have done something about it. I don't attack the FBI or the CIA very often, if you notice, because one, I'm very grateful, appreciative. I'm able to live my life. Nobody bothers me. But secondly, it's not an easy job. It's easy for me to sit here and say, oh, the FBI is doing this and the CIA is doing that. That's easy. So, God bless the good people at the FBI and the CIA, because it's easy to criticize. It's harder to be in their shoes and actually determine things. But I do want to say it is just mainstream knowledge that with the Parkland shooting, they knew about the shooter for months and they've had multiple calls on him. So there's a lot of weird connections there. And David Hogg, the little kid who's like running rampant all over the media and getting awards, his dad is an FBI agent. And I'm not saying that takes away from anything that he's doing. God bless him. God bless his family. I barely ever talk about any of that because I don't even want to get involved in it. It's not my deal. But I'm just saying there's like a weird connection to all of these things. And especially when you see that they're openly admitting, and I'm not saying everybody's doing that. That's why I say God bless the FBI, God bless the CIA, all the great people there. But there's like a weird, strange connection to a lot of things that they seem to be a bigger part of than, most people really understand. And I've always been very suspicious of the FBI because I've studied history. I've studied the drug war and, Rick Ross. If you guys have ever heard the story of Freeway Ricky Ross, he was a huge drug dealer in the 90s and the 80s, I believe. I don't know exactly what year. And he got arrested and sent to jail for life. He taught himself how to read in prison, realized there was a loophole, got out of jail. He's out of jail now, and he said that he was doing business with high-level people in the U.S. government. So I've always been suspicious of the intelligence communities because there's, documented proof on many fronts that they've actually, and police officers, from certain cities have come out and spoken in front of court and said that I found out that there's high-level people in the government that have been dealing drugs to the streets. So I've always been suspicious and skeptical. I wouldn't say I'm a hater and I spend that much effort on it. Like I say, God bless the good people. I know the full story of what's going on in the world is harder than I imagined. That's why I don't put any pressure. I'm not a whistleblower. I'm not a cop or anything. God bless the good people. Hopefully good people will figure it out. But there's so many stories that don't make sense. Not only Peter Strzok saying, I'm going to stop him from being president, which is totally illegal. You're not allowed to stop somebody. Like, how are you going to stop the president? Shouldn't it be a vote? Like, shouldn't people vote on the president of the United States? I also want to say, too, one thing about the FBI that never really made sense to me was I found out if you Google search and you could find CNN, New York Times, Vox, left-leaning publications even admitting this, that the FBI wrote a suicide letter to Martin Luther King and told Martin Luther King to kill himself because they didn't like him, So I've never learned in history, where was the part where the FBI apologized to Martin Luther King? Because something's not adding up. That's all I'm saying. When you say to me as a kid, Martin Luther King is one of the greatest Americans of all time, Martin Luther King is an American icon, Martin Luther King is a legend, Martin Luther King is well loved, he's one of the greatest individuals in our history, and then I find out, not in school, you didn't teach me this, I had to go find out for myself, I find out that the FBI told Martin Luther King to kill himself, and they've never apologized, and they never taught me about that, and no one was ever held accountable. Show me the point in history where that type of activity at the FBI ended. I don't know if it exists because, no, I've never heard anyone get held accountable when the greatest American of all time was sent a suicide letter from them. Like, something there's not adding up. And then the mainstream media tells me, we're liberal, we love black people more than you love black people, but you're not allowed to criticize the intelligence communities. How dare Trump for criticizing them? But wait, if you love black people more than me, then why have you never addressed the fact that they did that to Martin Luther King, but you're not allowed to question them? Like, nothing really adds up. So overall, I want to say, it's okay to be skeptical. I think people should be nice, though, and definitely not be too harsh, because it's, if I really want to criticize and spend my whole life criticizing the FBI or the CIA, I would become an FBI agent or a CIA agent and try to be the change I want to see in the world. That's why I rarely talk about it, because I don't really know what's going on there. Maybe there's a deeper plot that I don't know and they're really doing the right thing. Who knows? But I do want to say, in the IG report, Peter Strzok, big bombshell text, saying that no, we will stop it. So more proof. Do we really need proof, though? To be honest, you can see who's who. And people watch me and ask, what do I say? And listen, that it's like, I don't think the intelligence communities wanted President Trump to win. I think it's very, very obvious. And I think they were going to pretty much almost any lengths that they could to stop him. And it's not even like hidden. You have major people from the CIA and the FBI. They were on CNN and MSNBC the whole election campaigning against Trump. So it's not a big secret. They were openly, outwardly anti-Trump, and people working currently for them clearly were as well. So it's like, it's not a big secret, and they have a deep connection with CNN, the New York Times, and the Washington Post. That's why you always see these anonymous sources and these people, former analysts of national security. They're always on CNN, New York Times, and Washington Post. They basically run those outlets. Those are the anti-Trump outlets and, intelligence community people that don't like Trump. And there's nothing wrong with not liking Trump or liking Trump. That's just what I've taken from the whole thing is like, when it comes to the intelligence communities and New York Times and Washington Post and CNN, I don't see a very big difference between the three of them. So when people talk about deep state, with stories like this, with the Peter Strzok story, it's no surprise that people think that there's a bigger entity going on that thinks they exert power over the United States, because all you have to really do is open up your eyes and watch television or look at the TV, and you could literally see people saying, hey, I'd rather North Korea blow us up than to admit Trump did a good job. It's like people are outwardly admitting that they're anti-Trump, so it's not a huge surprise to me. Another big bombshell on the IG report is that James Comey, this is on page 400-something of the IG report. No, I didn't read the whole thing. Yes, I just took clips that I thought were most important. Yes, feel free to read the whole thing yourself if you have 3 days to spend reading it. But James Comey was using a Gmail server to conduct FBI business. And once again, I'm not trying to be a big critic. I'm not trying to spend a lot of time. Nobody's perfect. I'm not saying people don't have multiple email accounts. But when you're the head of the FBI, you would think that maybe you would just use your encrypted server and only use your government server. But that's not the case. James Comey, similar to Hillary Clinton, I guess got caught using a Gmail account, which, like I said, I hate to point the finger at everyone else, because I'm more about self-reflection and trying to heal myself and work on, myself. But if you're the head of the FBI and you're sending emails on a Gmail server, it's not the greatest thing. I don't think it's the worst thing in the world, but it's like, dude, I don't know how classified those things were, but you have, multiple countries. You're in charge of the biggest military power in probably world history, and you're on a Gmail account sending emails. I don't know, just something to think about. So overall, those are the two bombshells I took. Let me know what you think, and let me know what you took from them. You have Peter Strzok basically saying he would stop Trump from being elected. And also, I do want to add real quick, Rep. Mark Meadows said that originally that text from Peter Strzok was hidden from Congress. So not only did that happen, but they've been hiding it for a little while, according to Trey Gowdy and a lot of people in the government. So that